how do we contain this situation? Because people have been asking, where was the government when these deaths were happening? So I will just start by saying, pole sana to the families that lost their relatives and loved ones in this cult. For me, I think there are things which are wrong and they are wrong. It does not matter how you cover them with religious, how nicely you try to cover them. There are things which are wrong and they are wrong. And they should be wrong for all religion that truly believe in God. You cannot tell people to kill themselves. You cannot tell people to do things that are an affront to society, civilized society, and then you claim you're following religion. So I think for me, there are things that are wrong and they're wrong. And something needs to be done, especially when deaths now are coming on the record. But again, we need to balance this with the constitutional rights that allow freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of expression. So we need, for me, my thinking in this matter, to balance it is, I think the executive should quickly get in touch with the religious sector of our society. It's organized. The Muslims are organized, interreligion is organized, the Christians are organized. They should set up a working group that will have to give proposals in terms of what their thoughts are as far as coming up with a law that will help us regulate some of these practices that are against what civilized society should profess. So for me, the minister for culture and heritage and whatever, that department, I think should take a lead in this, and the discussion should be wider than just religion, should include cultural practices that may be negative, so that we have a proper legislation that can be proposed to come and deal with this issue. But if government decides to go head on it, there will be resistance. So the better way to do is to gather a working group which should be fairly representative, that should come with proposal within maybe 30 days, and then this can go through legislative screening, so that we as legislators then can add on the thinking around the working group, take this thing back to public participation, and then we get more ideas, and then we have a law that is acceptable to all Kenyans. I wouldn't go the Rwandan way, where the executive decides you should have only 10 churches in this area. It's enough, so the rest of you go away. I think that is the wrong approach, because churches are not like bars where you can say we will regulate. We only need 10 bars around this locality. So I wouldn't go the Rwandan way. I think that is, and also their political setup allows that. But for us, it would meet stiff resistance. So for me, let's have a working group. This working group should come up with ideas, propose a law, let the legislators pick it up, let them fertilize the ideas, and then let's bring the thing to first reading. Once the bill is on the floor for first reading or amendment of the Societies Act, as the case might be, and then that should go to public participation to further have it fertilized, and then we have a law. There must be something, there must be a structure. I think we can't keep quiet when these things are happening as they are.
But was it that the limitation of numbers that we have in Rwanda, or was it just regarding also the intellectual input, or maybe some sort of, as I asked before, of education on what you're doing? Maybe a diploma, because even that one is in the registrar.
I think
the act of a registrar.
I know, but for me,
why is it not implemented?
I don't think religion we should go that way, because prophets have come and they have not had degrees, they have not had any training on theology or anything, but they have a word of God, and they can lead people into good things. And the prophets that we have followed, we have listened to, we have never been told they went to schooling, you know. I think even the apostles, some were fishermen, some were tax collectors, you know, and you know, some were just doing their normal things, and yet Jesus called them and they did the job. The people who are of learning were people like Paul. Paul was a learned person in the Jewish religion. But we need, let me say, we need a discussion around that, because if I have a message from God and I'm a lawyer by training, how can you insist that I should have a theology background for me to preach? Some of the bishops we've had, like Oginde in Sitam, he's an architect by training. So you can't say that the burden must be specific to people with training in theology. I have a problem with that. Or even people with learning at all. I have a problem with that. So that's why I'm saying it is good to put these things on the table. We have the discussion, a robust discussion around that issue with people who are knowledgeable in those issues. Let us also look at international best practices, and let us agree that this is the way that we should do it. Let the matter come to Parliament, let it go back to public participation, then let us have a law that will sort of cover this problem.
So let me come to Wilson Sosio and ask that question. What did the Registrar of Acts then envisage to do when they actually itemize some of those requirements, like diploma and a degree in theology? And we have the senator and the rest of Kenyans maybe who think that, you know, some of these callings, you cannot really subject people to training because it's a matter of faith. So even if you are a bishop and you're calling and your training is on another different, you know, sector, theology, diploma in theology or religious studies, does not really matter.
It does matter. And if you look at the history of Kenya in terms of growth of religion, the training of religious leaders to the highest standards has been practiced in the major religions in this country. And the enforcement of requirements by the registrar of societies, I don't think has been done effectively as it should. And some of those gaps is what we are witnessing. This type of girls that have a free hand to do what they're doing, and you can see where they are in Malindi, in some isolated place, and we've seen this almost a holocaust of some sort, where we have a religion where people die in tens of numbers without the knowledge of government securities. I think let's call a crime a crime. What is outside the set standards in terms of the regulations? Mm-hmm. It may not be in a piece of legislation, but already is provided in some regulation, but has not been enforced. I think should be enforced, and we've seen it has been treated, the entire forest has been treated as a crime scene, and this matter is being cracked. I don't think Kenya at the age of 60 should be straining from existence of cults, when in fact the existing religions, we've seen religious leaders leading the main churches with the highest level of education and knowledge in religion, and so I don't think Kenya is short of, and that should be a requirement for any church, setting the minimum standards of those who are leading the various churches and organizing the churches and various religious activities. It is time we enforce such standards so that we have an orderly society and we enjoy our freedom of religion within the presence of protection of life and promotion of quality life, but not what we are seeing. These are actually criminal entities that should be dealt with as such criminally. But as Honorable Mungatana is stating, it's also time for the Houses of Parliament to maybe elevate the regulations that exist within the Register of Societies to legislative level, so that really we implement what is emphasized in the Constitution, the supremacy of God, and Kenya as a nation that recognizes the supremacy of God, but not existence of cults. We want to see orderly religious activities within the country. From where I come from as a teacher, it's a challenge in schools to sustain orderly upbringing of students through right religious perspectives. And we have seen radicalization of students, not only to this type of girls, but to other forms like terrorism. And these are issues that are real. We are dealing with a country that now the social ecosystem is populated by all manner of drugs and substances that threaten the very youth that is the future of this country and is the backbone of the economy. And so these are matters that must be dealt with criminally, and as it is dealt with criminally, it must be cured legislatively as well.
Okong Mogini, what is your view?
Yeah, Dibal, first really, that 21 Kenyans can be taken to a forest and they are forced to engage in an act that leads to their death, and the government of the day has no idea, is worrying. It tells you that somebody somewhere is sleeping on the job. If this was in a country like Australia, the CS responsible will not be in office. But in Kenya we are treating this like a normal occurrence, and just discussing as among other issues. It's not something that should happen in a civilized country, The intelligence networks in this country, and if you look at the increase of budget for the intelligence units in this country, it has increased tremendously for the last 6 years or so. So that's why they are funded, to ensure that the intelligence gathers what happens on the ground. So first, I think as Kenyans, we are really saddened that this can happen under the watch of our government. It's something that should not happen if we have a government that is functional, that is supposed to protect the lives of Kenyans. We can never challenge the freedom of religion. That is protected in the Constitution. And mainstream churches, talk of the Catholic, talk of the SDA, talk of the Anglican, they have very good structures on how they train their pastors. In fact, the most educated people are the Catholic priests. You will not become a Catholic priest unless you have studied and obtained a degree. Some have even 2 degrees, very learned. Their structure is so organized. The same with like SDA, the predominant church in my county. In fact, Dr. Nyakundi, who heads the SDA conference in Nyamira, has a PhD. They have a university in Baraton where they train their pastors. Many of them go to Bugema in Uganda, where they are trained, and then when you come, you have a structure. You have the presiding pastor, then you have the elders, and everything that you are doing in that church, there is an accountability mechanism. So you cannot take people to a forest somewhere under the mainstream churches, and nobody will know. So what I think we need to urge the government is to really look at the ones who want to abuse the freedom of religion. People who are coming up with cults, and the only person who can keep an eye is the government of the day. The only problem we have, Dibal, is that we have a government that wants to be populist. You cannot say that I cannot touch those who are misbehaving within the church because I will look like I'm unpopular. Governments are there to make unpopular decisions as long as they are for the benefit of the larger society. There was an attempt, a very good attempt by the former Attorney General, Professor Gideon Mugai, if you remember. He published regulations, and he was inviting the church to come forth. So they discuss how they can regulate themselves. You know, the way, you remember how the Media Act came into place in 2007. Of course, there was resistance, but because we had a very strong president at that time, Mwai Kibaki, he said, let the media discuss and see what input they want to make as we put in place a mechanism for self-regulation for the media. That was the same approach for the church. But when there was a protest here and there, the government coiled and said, okay, we withdraw. I think that's not the way you lead a country. We need to take this head on so that we don't wake up to another day where we see another cult has killed another 50. We must do something. We can't raise up our hands in desperation and say, oh, you know, freedom of religion, we cannot regulate. No. The ones that are doing the right thing, and the church is playing a critical role. You know, I was attending crusades on Saturday, and you can see how the youth who are on holiday, you know, get into the church system. They are kept busy. They are the ones singing for us. They are really, the church is really taking care of trying to build the moral fiber of society. But these cults that are really misleading Kenyans to the level of leading 21 Kenyans to die in a forest in Kilifi, these ones, the government must crack the whip. You and me cannot do it. The laws are there. The regulations are there. It's not. We don't want to go to the extreme, of course, of President Kagame in Rwanda. But really, we can do something. Debal. So the short of it is, let the government step out in courage and do something so that the church, the Christian fraternity, can hold a discussion. Let the government come with published regulations, and then invite the church to come in and engage in participation. There is intense public participation within the church fraternity. Then we can have something rolled out that has ownership from the church itself. Yeah.
Beatrice Elachi, good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
A very interesting discussion there, because this is heart-wrenching. You know, people who really bore the brunt are the children, and you can imagine where you are lacking food, water for so many days, you know, beyond a month or two. That naturally, sometimes, of course, it will affect your system. But when we're discussing about regulation, and we know, as Mungatana is saying, oh, you don't need to go to school and matters of faith. But critically also in school, I think they're taught on matters of on how to interpret the Bible, on how not to take, you know, a phrase or a verse out of context. And the principles, I don't know, of homiletics when they're doing their Bible schooling.
Well, first of all, it's very unfortunate. And you know, we normally say that Kenyans, we are very strong Christians. And I think people take advantage of that. And because of poverty, I think we've now gone beyond people believing that I might get whatever I'm looking for within this. And so we've gone, many of us, in religion. Some now go beyond religion. For this one of Kilifi is a very sad story, because now this one is, whether there is poverty, you have decided you want to go to heaven, so you are fasting to go to Jesus. It is absolutely very sad how, and I know it's because people have gone through a lot, and so you realize, is this the best way? But then, where are the chiefs at that time? The whole administration. And you know, the chief is right there. And he can't just be a whistleblower to just tell government, look, something is happening here and we need to see.
What if the chief himself was also...
That's what I'm wondering. Is the chief part of the process of fasting to go to heaven? And anyway, in all this, I will agree with Senator that we have to go back to the regulations. And the church, the religious fraternity, has to agree to regularize its own fraternity, unless you want now government to come in, unless you want parliament to come in, which I think it is time we come in, because they have been unable. Yeah, we gave them, that time, I remember Kibaki gave them a very good opportunity. And so this politics of shying away, it was not about shying away. We just need to sit on the table and have regulations. The other day you saw in Bungoma, they call him Jesus of whatever, Tongere. We are joking. We are absolutely just...
Jesus of Tongaren. We have Pastor John Pesa in Kisumu as well.
It is joking with the religion, and especially just a mockery to God. It's wrong. And so if the religious leaders are unable to sit and regularize their own guidelines, we will do it. In fact, as we are going to just do it, it's serious, because it is wrong the way now we have decided to take advantage. And even we just have to have regulations. Why would you have a church of 50 people? I mean, it's not making sense at all. Because a church is like, okay, 50 is okay, because we normally say it's a communal of 2 or 3. But then you have to be very clear in how you're guiding your flock, and that's why, whether we are Catholics, whether all the mainstream churches, everyone has gone to school, by the way. They have degrees. The reason is, within church also you start with children. And each children has a wish that I would wish to be this. And so from the basis of the values of church, that is where people were taught, so that you get to understand. That is why if you wanted to be a doctor, it's not about, I'm going to be a doctor because there's money in that. No. It was within how you grew up, and you felt, I would wish to just go and save people. The way you used to wake up in class and who do you want to be? A doctor. And if you ask the reason, at that time, the reasons were never about it will pay me well or not. No. The reasons are, I feel I have a calling, and in that calling, I would be a doctor to do that. I would be a pilot. I would be this. And so in church is where you, from Sunday school, is where you start learning those values of your career, by the way, as you move. And you learn from the Bible, and that is why even Muslims, when they are with their Quran, you will see, as they go madrasa, they are learning. Same way with Christians. So you can't come now and tell me we've just lost 26. We have saved 17 who are malnourished because they were... As you fast, there is a meaning of fasting. You fasted for a purpose. Jesus did not just fast. And so when you tell people you are fasting to go and see Jesus, definitely you will not see him.
Right.
Definitely you'll be more angry than what you're thinking you're doing is right.
Okay.
But because of lack of that knowledge, we take advantage. And especially in the rural areas, I think we have to look at also what are we believing in. Because I think we've gone beyond even what now we are believing in.
I agree. Well, we take a short break. When we circle back, because you mentioned that almost 80% of Kenyans, we claim to be Christians. Yeah. So 80% of Kenyans, we claim to be Christians. Are we 80% illiterate Christians? But you're not Bible literate? Because even if we skim through the Bible and you read all about fasting, how will Jesus come to you? Will you fast to go to Jesus, or Jesus himself promised that he'll break through the blues to come to you? That is a question we should be asking ourselves. So we've got it all convoluted as it is as far as the matter of religion is concerned, and how pivotal it is then to educate these illiterate Christians that are in Kenya. Right? Most of them are Bible illiterate, as you can see. Wilson Sosion, you're the mwalimu, you'll tell us. We take a short break. When we circle back, we continue tomorrow. Don't go away.